October 5th is Bodhidharma, Festival of Bodhidharma, October 31st. The Festival of Sagaki, or literally, it's All Souls Day in Christianity, and it's the feeding of the hungry ghosts with the teaching, those who are not in peace, helping those who are not yet at peace, who have died, if they did not understand that there was no separative soul, and there's still jangles wandering around. Let me think, what's the next one? November 1st, Festival of the Founder. That was the day that Kōhō Zenji, who I regard as the founder of Shasta, died. And then Thanksgiving Day, we have a Thanksgiving ceremony on whatever is Thanksgiving Day. It's usually the third Thursday, I think, in November. I can't remember rightly. December the 7th is the eve of the Festival of the Buddha's Enlightenment. December the 8th, the Festival of the Buddha's Enlightenment. And December the 29th, the Festival of the Avatamsaka scripture, which explains all of the stages that one goes through in meditation, which is why it's so important to have a good translation in English, including all the stuff I've been talking about today and how to do training. So that's our calendar. It's a big calendar. Yes?
Today you said there was on June 19th a ceremony of what compassion?
June 19th. Avalokiteshvara. That's Kanzeon. That's the Sanskrit for Kanzeon. Avalokiteshvara. The aspect of compassion, the Buddha's aspect of compassion. You recite the scriptures for how compassion is shown. We recite that every morning anyway in the at morning service, just before morning service starts. On the actual days of compassion, we have up a whole lot of scrolls. They go all around every so many yards of feet. Scrolls of the way in which Kanzeon, compassion, is seen, and you see her holding a basket of fish that she's rescued from the fishmonger, or holding a small child that has got lost, pouring out the water of compassion onto the sea of the world from a vial, holding the branch that makes peace amongst all people, all of the different aspects, sitting beside the sea, watching over the safety of sailors. They're very beautiful. And you do the big procession on those days. All the congregation and the monks go round, bow to each picture, recognize it, recollect it, how compassion is seen. There will probably be a celebration in China, or at least in Taiwan, for those sailors who were rescued by the Dutch ship. A merit will be sent, or prayers offered, if you like to use it that way. Merit, we call it sending merit, to the captain and men of the ship who saved them. Gratitude comes into this in all directions. And you have 4 of these ceremonies a year, one each season, because you never know from where compassion will come. It's very beautiful seeing all the pictures all around the temple. We've got one today. Yeah, it's over by now. Because we were doing this, we couldn't be at it. Well, that's all right. Yes, go ahead.
Are there any exercises in Buddhism or yoga practice for the purpose of making it easier to sit in meditation?
You can always use such things. You can always use such things. They don't actually have specific ones they use, but anything you find that works is fine. Just don't do something that's going to hurt you. Don't push it. I did, and I literally messed up my hips. Yeah, from trying to do it the way they wanted it done. And you see, Kōrō Zenji could do a lot. He was abbot. But he had a lot of power over traditions in an ancient temple. And he said, when you get something started in the West, start thinking that these are human beings that you're working with, and not automatons. He didn't actually use that word, he used robots. But what it came down to was, remember, the body has some rights. And don't try and mess people up. Just because you've seen everybody sitting there looking like ramrods and going to get beaten up if they didn't. Which is why I do it the way I do. Really, we're out to get to the eternal. We're not out to have a contest in who's got the... who can sit best like a ramrod. That's not the purpose of this business. And if someone can't sit, you can meditate in corpse pose, as it's called. It's an awful term for it. But it means lying flat on your back with your hands like this. Or even at your sides, so long as the palms are up. And if I have someone who's dying or very ill, oh, what can I do? I can't sit. Well, fine. The power to die while sitting, standing, or lying is obtained through the power of Zazen, says Dogen. And you need to know that what is needed is the will to train, and if you're well enough to make the effort to sit up. But the eternal is not going to hold it against you if you can't. But you will be letting yourself down if you don't do the very best you can whilst you're well enough to do it. Yeah. Oh, yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah. You should really only rinse the mouth, not drink. It's very important to rinse the mouth. You need to do that. Well,
it's up to you, but we can't.
We don't.
We don't, yeah. We also have 15 minutes to get to the meditation hall.
Which does...
So you learn how to be quick and cheerful fast.
I can remember a doctor in London, in England, who came to Throstle Hall Priory, which is our big temple over there, which now has somewhere around 30 monks. It's almost as big as Shasta in some ways. They've just finished putting up their new meditation hall and ceremony hall. Built of stone, I might add. Anyway, this good lady doctor wrote to inform us that she would need 2 cups of tea before she went to the meditation hall. And the abbot grinned quietly. After a week, she said, I didn't realize I could survive without my tea. Well, you might find out some interesting things. Yes.
Could you talk about screen and watch the
Yes, I can. I'll actually be going into that a fair bit this afternoon. But a stream entrant is one who, for lack of a better term, has had a first Kenshaw. He has realized that the eternal really does exist. And at least for some time, he usually badly wants to continue. The trouble with being a stream entrant is it's like somebody who puts his foot in the water, and says, ooh, it's cold, and decides he'll put it in again when it's a bit warmer. Now, sometimes, usually, if they're really sincere, they go straight on, but not always. Why I'm saying it is a stream entrant doesn't necessarily always make it. But an awful lot of stream entrants get called Rorschis, which is very unfortunate. The term Rorschie is not well understood in this country. There are two uses of it. One is when it is given you by your master, because not only has he seen you as a stream entrant, he's seen you keep your feet in the water, and perhaps even seen you get a second or even a third Kenshaw. So he knows you're going to continue. A once returner is someone who has had at least two more Kenshaws, who has had the second or ongoing, which is the little moment, so to speak, that make one dance of certainty, and the third one, which is a pretty big one, and that is a once returner. There shall only be one more birth somewhere or other, but nobody quite knows how that birth or what that birth will be. Now, a Rorschie, as I said, there are two forms of it. One is the one that is given by the master himself, and the other is the honorary one, which automatically goes with being an abbot. And as soon as one ceases being an abbot, one is no longer a Rorschie. It's an honorary title that goes with the job. And this has not been understood in this country or in England at all. And it's created a lot of misunderstandings, because people are saying, well, he doesn't behave like so-and-so or so-and-so. Of course, they shouldn't be talking about each other, but they are, because they're human, and they don't necessarily know what they should know about the precept. But one who has received it from his master has been seen to be behaving as and like a Rorschie should, as one who has had Kenshaw. The other may not have had Kenshaw at all, but is in charge of the monastery and is given the title as an administrative title. So when you go to study with people over here, you have to be very careful of how these titles have come about. Stream entrant, first Kenshaw, probably through most of the ongoing Kenshaw, until third Kenshaw, when it becomes once returner. Once returner, one who will be reborn only once. The one beyond that is the one who shall only be born in a heaven, for next time round he will be a Buddha. I have all of this in, we've got it in the iconography, haven't we? I didn't bring the iconography with me. I did a very, very large iconography because most people do not know very much about what the pictures and the like mean. They see these very beautiful pictures, but they don't know what they're all about. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
You, yeah.
Again, what can be reborn, and this is nothing to be reborn. It goes back to my question.
Well, may I answer it this way? When I'm a once returner, and if you're still about, well, I'll tell you. I really can't answer your question by any other means. I'm not being facetious in that. Maybe I am a once returner. Maybe you're a once returner. Who knows? The point is that it doesn't really matter to my mind, all that much. It's interesting, but it doesn't really matter, because what matters is we get on and train. And when we find out, we find out. The great ones who have written these things, who know far, far, far more than I will probably ever learn, know about them. I don't yet. But I don't doubt I will, and you will too. Yes. We've got about 10 minutes before we eat. I see a hand, yes.
We were talking about karma and perhaps picking up the karma that was deposited before and then creating your own karma. And the understanding of it and how you cut the roots. If you have had in meditation an experience and you're able to look at your life and see something that's of concern and relate it, what's difficult is to know how to handle that when it's very strong in your life.
What you have to then do is consider how best you can handle it in the light of the precepts that you have now been studying. Because that's the only way you can handle it if you would stay a Buddhist. Don't think that's going to be easy. It's not. That's when, if you've got members, forgive me, of your family you can really trust, or there's a priest you can really, or a priest you can really trust, or a member of the Sangha you can really trust, you can go and talk to them about it and take refuge, literally, in the Sangha to find the best way you know how to deal with the situation. That's one of the great purposes of taking refuge in the Sangha. Fair enough? There was a lady behind you, I think, yes.
I understand about doing our best. However, in terms of taking the precept, what if the person really doesn't have righteous guilt or contrition about certain things? Perhaps the prostitute you mentioned. What if she's feeling okay about her focus?
Well, if she's trying to really do the others, to keep the other precepts, she will eventually come to the realization that she is demeaning the life of Buddha with what she's doing. She is, in fact, breaking the 10th precept as well as having illicit or unwise sexual activity. She will realize that she is killing, to a certain extent, the Buddha nature by selling something so precious to herself. So the other precepts work in on it and help her deal with the one she can't quite deal with yet.
Is it possible to take what one can and wait for the others to take?
That's what they do in China. Oh, yes. And it works very, very well. The shopkeepers have the biggest problem. How can I be sure I'm charging a fair profit? I do know of one bunch of shopkeepers who all got together, and they were all part of one Buddhist temple. And since they were most of the shopkeepers in the town anyway, it worked very well, to fix what they felt was fair profit so that they could take the stealing vow at the next Jiyu-Kai, which was very, very good for everybody in the town. There's nothing wrong in using your business association to keep the precepts and its wise ways of helping beings. Oh, yes. You've got to remember that stealing isn't just going in and picking up a pack of gum. You can steal someone's reputation. You can steal his respect. Yes?
How can you keep constantly thinking about the precepts and trying not to go go against them, trying to incorporate.
It is said, and I know it to be true, that you never know when you're doing enlightened action, but you always know when you're not. If you are not comfortable about something, after you have taken the precepts and determined to do better, beforehand you may not know, but if after you have done it, if some of the things you do you don't feel comfortable about, then it's best to look at what you did, because you probably didn't do it according to the precepts. You mustn't be afraid to move. You have to be able to move. Quite sure about it. Then you need to look at it, because you probably could have done better. Fair enough? It's very true. You never know when there's enlightened action, but you always know when there is not. The old piece of scripture says, enlightened action leaves no wake. You can't look behind yourself and see a wake. Yeah. Yep. They are believed to have picked up karma, yes. They are believed to have picked up karma and are working it out.
Are they part of the consciousness?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We have an animal funeral ceremony, an animal ordination ceremony. We have an animal cemetery up in Shasta. We have, I had a pet rabbit that I got one year, and I took it in a basket into the Hondor to be introduced to the Sunday school as the new Buddha that was to come. And they all wanted to pet the new Buddha that was to come. Oh, yes. Everything is included in it. You can't cut out any life at all. Which is why, if you have to eat meat because the doctor says so, you better be doing it because you really and truly need it, and not because you want it. But if you're going to be seriously ill if you don't eat it, then you will definitely be wrong, because then you can't continue to train. And you must think of the animals that have died as saints for your benefit. And you better be worthy of that. So it gives you a purpose for living as well. Yes?
What about all the snails in my garden? They have good nature too.
Yep.
I shouldn't have questioned them.
It is your karma. I've been trying to teach my puppy that snails are not on the menu. Revolting habit.
Oh, but then I shouldn't buy pork meat for my dog.
You shouldn't what?
Buy canned pork meat for my dog. The dog should be vegetable food too.
He should be, but you have to remember that he has his karma to work out too. And if you take an animal that has to eat meat for its own life, then you had better train that animal well to be the finest dog possible, and train yourself well to be the finest human possible. Then the animal, the horse, will not have died in vain. There is no karmic-free activity. Remember that every time you open your mouth, you're going to be killing a few microbes. Have you ever seen the magnified pictures of those things that wander about on us and eat the dead skin cells? There's no freedom from karma in this world. So what we end up doing is the finest job we know how of being human beings, to be worthy of that which dies for us. And a cabbage dies for us. Well, we'd better go and feed. This afternoon, what I propose to do is having explained all of this morning, show you what the head temple of all Soto Zen, or serene reflection meditation, does for the purpose of training people. Now, the pictures that you're going to see are of Kei Tokuji, the temple where Dogen trained in the 12th century. They will show you many of the ways in which temples help people by means of visualization to realize what it is they are actually possibly going to go through in order to find their way back to the eternal. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever seen the Tiger Balm Gardens with all the hells and the heavens. Yes, that's a Taoist version of it, and it was put up by the manufacturers of Tiger Balm as a memorial. That's a graveyard, by the way. It's just for one man. They, Mr. Park, yes, you went and saw him, for who manufactured or invented, I'm not quite sure if he did both, Tiger Balm. And it shows all that you had to go through in order to reach the Tao. The Buddhist version, and the Taoists got it from the Buddhists, the Buddhist version you are going to see in this temple. Now, unfortunately, I thought the authorities here understood that we needed the screen for 2 days. They were famous last thoughts. Apparently, because I did not tell them I needed it for 2 days, they walked off with it. And although there are persons here, oh, I can't let you have a screen. Go see so-and-so. Or I can't let you have a screen, so we got the wall. Let's go and enjoy the wall. In meditation, as depicted by a rainbow cloud, is the ultimate end of this. But even when you've made it that far, you're still going on beyond, always going on beyond, always becoming Buddha, which is why it is so dangerous to use the term of gone beyond. You can't do that. You're still at it. Once you've made it, then you're stuck. There is always training, however far you go, because it's very easy, once you think you've made it, or even if you have made it once, to say, well, all I have to do is sit back now and enjoy my enlightenment. I used to keep a cartoon up in Shasta, which annoyed some people, but which was highly appropriate. It showed, no disrespect to Texas, a rich Texas type in a huge Cadillac with a big, one of those huge 10-gallon hats, drawn up outside a temple. It looked like a Thai temple. And there was an old monk standing there leaning on a broom saying to him, "How nice of you to come and visit us after your enlightenment." Such things make a very good point on this. Could you pull that away because I need the light? Sorry, friend. So please keep in mind, however much, as Dogen says, however finely enlightened you are, however great is your enlightenment or your finding of the way, if once the opposites start entering in again, you might as well start from scratch again. Don't ever think you have made it completely and don't have to do anything more. The only way you can have made it completely is if you keep going. Dogen tells an interesting story. Those who think they have made it completely, even after the finest Kensho, are like someone who scoops up a handful of water and says he's got the river in his hand. And you know exactly how well you can hold on to it. So remember, whatever you do, you have to keep at it. And it's doubly important for people who are Zen masters or great priests to keep that in mind, or they are in real trouble, because that's when they start making mistakes. Now, what I'm going to propose to do when I finish talking about this a little is to do some meditation starting around 3, and then after we've done our 45 minutes and we've seen if any of you need help, then we can have some more questions and finish. There were a few other things I wanted to bring up. Remember that the curtains used at Jiyu-Kai are always red. The Pilgrim's Way for, I think I know the reason, but I've never been told it. The Pilgrim's Way is always painted red. It's actually a pinkish red in China, but it's white red in Japan. And one of the things I found when I meditated deeply was I seemed to sort of go down dark red corridors in the beginning. Perhaps this could just be me, but it could also be that I wasn't the only one who had the same thing happen. Or it could just be that red was such an important color in China and Japan that these colors were used to help people. I thought I'd mention that before somebody asked me why it was red, and that's the only answer I can come up with. Yes, the same thing. It's for everything of importance. Let me think, what else was there? The use of a great valley for this purpose is, of course, very, very excellent, because it implies the going deeper and deeper into oneself. But you can do it. I rather like the Tendo-Zan way of doing it, Kei Tokuji, which, by the way, is 600 years older than the other one. That started in 300, and the one we just saw started in 9. We're not talking exactly of new buildings here or new ideas. I rather like the idea of the 3 shrines. When you're still not ready yet, keep them outside the temple. They're not fit to get in yet. You know, just think about that. You're sitting in the shrine saying, I've got to get the lower side of me under better control before they'll even let me go and meditate in the next door hall. Most temples don't have either so much land or so much advantage. It is also interesting that Kei Tokuji used red trees to line its way. It's a great shame that the... no, it's fine. Yes, yes. It's a great shame that the Chinese government has cut down so many of them. A really great shame to my mind. But cut them down they have, and there's nothing we can do about that. Got any stray questions on this before we start meditating? Yes. Kensho, understanding, certainty of the eternal existing, the eternal existence, a certainty. They come, one has small glimpses, sometimes bigger ones, sometimes, as Daiset Suzuki used to put it, the little moments that make one dance. But they come. That is Kensho. Yes. Yes.
It seems to me that the temples should be reaching out to the busy streets, and it almost seems like they're closing off and becoming isolated, and it's hard to get in, and you go in and never come back out.
Well, I conclude that that is because of national temperament. Remember, we're talking about China. If there's anywhere that somebody can't get into in China, they clamor to get into it. They got to find out what's going on. They're going to get in. They don't care what it takes or how much they get hurt. And why not take advantage of that? If you want people to train, I mean, what else are you going to do other than do it from that point of view?
Well, do they finally come back out?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, otherwise they'd be so full, God.
Those towns would be full of medium-sized and small-sized temples.
Yes.
Whereas the big mountain temples were mainly for the training of monks and to set a place away from the world where the monks could go to study and not be distracted, and where people could leave the world temporarily to do the same thing.
You've got to also remember they were the old folks' homes. You've brought your children up. You've made your money. You have no reason for continuing to strive to make a tremendous amount more. You put on the white clothes of the pilgrim. You take your rosary and your staff, and you set out to make the great journey back to the eternal. And there were huge hostels for these pilgrims, very much in the same sort of way as you have pilgrims' hostels in the great Christian shrines of Canterbury and York and the like. They are very, very similar in that sense. And I can remember sitting in Sorgiji doing my job and seeing two extremely old gentlemen who were obviously grandfathers or great-grandfathers sitting there on the floor quietly counting money for the temple. They'd moved in, they would die there, they were doing their pilgrimage in their old age. And in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Burma, the old would move in and settle down. They were not, that's something that I think we could learn. The care of the old by the church in the Far East is exquisite. It was not a putting off them into nursing homes and the like. It was a responsibility felt. And they were given an awful lot of hope and help. It was rather beautiful in a way. Yes? Well, yes. Naturally, you wish to have the most beautiful perfumes that would be in heaven, as in heaven, so on earth. The perfume of the lotus blossom. The average big incense burner in the Far East is frequently shaped like a great lotus flower, from which comes forth a candle or incense. Or, yes. Well, why don't we start setting up? By the time we've got set up, it will be about 3. We'll give everybody a chance to have a minor stretch. There are 3 things I should have mentioned in teaching you meditation, which, because I do them so instinctively, I didn't think of. One is you should always punch your cushion up to make sure that the contents don't become lumpy. There is nothing more murderous to sit on than a lumpy cushion. You should really give it a good punching and make sure that all the kapak inside is really loose, or you end up sitting on a species of brick. And you would not be the first person I had heard of who got hemorrhoids because he didn't know he could punch his cushion. So I do want to mention that. I remember someone in England asking me, were they permitted to punch their cushion? And it never had entered my head that they would need to ask such a question. Well, just in case people think that they're supposed to get like bricks, they're not. So please do that. The second thing is what to do with the mouth, tongue, and how to breathe. always breathe through the nose. Don't clamp your teeth shut or grind your teeth. We had someone once who used to grind them. Don't do that. Let the teeth be closed naturally, the lips closed naturally, and the tongue resting lightly against the back of the top teeth. Everything natural with no strain. That's the second one. The third thing is the importance of natural pride as opposed to deliberate pride. You do have to have a certain amount of natural pride, in the sense that you should wear clean clothing when you meditate. You should like yourself in what you are wearing. You are not expected to go out as they did when I was young for church and buy the latest in all fruit hats for Easter Sunday morning. That's not what we're talking about. But we are saying, have a natural pride in what you wear for meditation. Be sure it's clean, simple, comfortable, but not sloppy. There's a difference between being slovenly and naturally clean and tidy. Those are the three things I forgot to mention. Is there anything else I forgot out of it? Right, anybody got any questions?
What sort of a sense about yourself? You said, like what you wear. What sort of a sense about yourself should you have?
Well, don't do something that is going to make you look at the next door person and think how much better I look than he does. And if the next door person hasn't exhibited much in the way of natural pride, it's still nothing to do with you. Just do the best you can for you and don't worry about your next door neighbor. And perhaps all he may have is some very torn old clothing, but if it's clean, he's made the same efforts probably that you have.
No, I'm meaning more, should you like yourself or should you try to be blank?
Don't try to and don't try not to. Just be. Yes. But don't put yourself, what I'm really trying to say, I suppose, is don't put yourself in a position where you don't like the image you are presenting. Because that's just going to preclude all meditation from your mind. Okay? Yes?
Does it make any difference which foot you make your first step with in walking meditation?
The thing they tell you is start with the left foot always. I don't know the reason. It could just have been custom in Sojiji. I can't answer you as to the reason. I do know that one of the stricter rules was that you entered a room by the left side of the door, always. I presumed that that was so that you did not leave your slippers, since you always took your slippers off when you went into a room, right in the middle of the doorway for some poor wretch to trip over. I presumed you put your slippers to one side and then went through as close to that side. The only person who was permitted to go through the center of a doorway in Sojiji was the abbot. But then he got somebody who picked up his slippers behind him anyway, so it didn't really make much difference. And on leaving the meditation hall, he always came out by the right side. But then it was his left side that he came out of, so considering where he sat, so it didn't really make all that much difference anyway. They always said that, but that could just be Sojiji. I don't know. Yes.
Don't you think entering by the left, we can always make our turn clockwise?
It could have very much to do with the clockwise turning. But remember that you could turn to the left and continue going anti-clockwise. I've known some rooms you went into and you went that way. So I don't know. But definitely one always walks in a clockwise manner, and thank you for bringing that up. One never goes anti-clockwise. One always turns clockwise. But some Western rooms would not make that possible. Yes. Yes.
It seems quite an examined existence, and I was wondering...
Quite a what?
Examined existence. I was wondering if you could comment on...
Why? The reason for, as you put it, the examined existence is because you are trying to examine everything you do. Remember, you're a volunteer. You're not doing this because you're forced to. And that being so, what you are doing is to specifically help yourself. Spontaneity just doesn't come into it in the sense of, is it damaging my spontaneity or not? It just doesn't have to come into it. Because what you are trying to do is a specific thing. If you want to examine everything you do and see how you are keeping the precepts, you can't sort of worry about certain other things. They come later. But while you're doing this, you're doing this. Okay? Yes.
Would you say something more about taking refuge in the Dharma?
Being willing to know that the scriptures always can give you help. That is to take refuge in the Dharma. One way you can take refuge in the Dharma is when you're sitting there on a ho-hum evening and it's lousy on TV and there's nothing to read. Well, how about the scriptures? You've always got them. That's putting it in a very bad light, but it works. Yes.
I guess I find myself to be a highly visual person, and
Yes.
I haven't done this very long, but closing my eyes seems to be helpful in the beginning. The auditory things seem to fade away relatively quickly.
Yeah.
But as long as I keep my eyes open partially, it's hard for the visual things, even if it's not very visual. It's just a blank wall, so it cannot distract me.
That you'll get over with time. That goes with time. I can remember being most concerned with that when I first started. And I got a wooden wall in front of me in Swarjiji. And I decided to prevent my own distraction by concentrating on a large knot. And presently the knot started opening. That was not what you did. That was definitely not what you did.
So that will get better.
Oh, yes, I guarantee it. As one who is extremely visual. There is another way of breath counting than just the inhalation or the exhalation. Most people say only do the inhalation. And that is which is a Theravada method, by the way, of following the breath round, as it is called. We talked about the backward flowing method for a few minutes yesterday. Watch the breath come up the back, go over the front, all the way down, through the toes, back to the heels, all the way up and down. And it can be extremely helpful, but you don't want to do too much of it. But that will also help, and it will also bring all of the body into the meditation sometimes, because sometimes the thoughts that are coming in are, my foot hurts, or I've got a dead toe, something like that will go on. And that will help with that one tremendously. But again, it's one of those things you don't want to use all the time. Yeah, well, things like that will happen, and they will stop. Just don't chase after them or getting caught up in them. Yes, you had something, I think.
In one of your books, I think it was in the section you were speaking of meditation, you said something to the effect that you had to give up everything and have someone to protect you.
Well, I was, at that time, the doctors had said I was dying at that time. And the only way I could meditate totally safely, because you've got to remember, I'm always having people after me, disciples who want information, this, that, and the other. I had to have someone who literally sat at the door so that I could meditate in peace and not keep being grabbed for practical purposes. I'm afraid an awful lot of muddles came out of that, because with the best will in the world, somebody else who is trying to do what you would do but doesn't know what it was you would do can result in an awful lot of flaps and misunderstandings and muddles. But it did have to happen. Yes.
Well, I thought you were speaking to the readers as something that I would have to do.
You may one day, if you are in a similar situation. You may very well need to someday, because there comes a time when one can get so deeply into meditation, one is extremely vulnerable. Why do you think they went off into that little cave for the final part of it? And you can bet there were dozens of protector monks around there. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of them, but in Tendai and other temples in the Middle Ages, there were warrior monks whose job it was to guard the temples. And officially they were there for defense, but they moved from defense to offense in double quick time and ended up chasing up and down the mountains on either side of Kyoto. And the poor temple in the middle that had nothing to do with them, which was a Shin one, was always getting burned down until Shin got a bit fed up with this, with some reason, I might add. So there were protector monks, and on the night of transmission, you get 4 of the largest monks you can to protect the transmission room from, well, we have had people who've come over the freeway fence and banged on doors, and this actually happened one night during a transmission. A girl covered in blood came off of the freeway and said she'd been raped on the freeway, and a couple of people said, well, we'll take you to the hospital and we'll look after you. And she said, oh, no, I want to get back on the freeway and get another lift. Well, one wonders about such circumstances. But it does happen. And when you have very solemn ceremonies, or someone who is in extremely deep meditation, or who is, in the old Latin term, in extremis, doing the meditations of dying, yes, you do have to have someone who can protect you. And it's something that perhaps one day will be necessary in the hospices that are coming up for dying in this country. We don't know yet. Fair enough. Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. When the opposites arise, the Buddha mind is lost. It was what I was talking about all day. When birth and death come up as a problem, then you have not found the peace and freedom from opposites. All sorts of opposites are coming up all day long. Well, one was the one I gave you of the monk who carried the girl over the stream. Yeah. The other one had an opposite opinion because he hadn't understood what was actually going on. Anybody else? Yes.
Aura concept. How does that tie into
How's it tie into what?
Aura?
Yeah, how's it tie into what? Buddhism? That? Oh, yes, there is. It is known as the cauldron, which has to turn what is within it into steam, so that steam may turn into the water of the Spirit. It is the place where, in the end, deep meditation starts from. But it takes some time for it to get down there. People think, well, it must be there already. In some of us, it probably is. But it can take time for the meditation to get that deep. So, if we had another couple of weeks, I'd get into all that side of it for you as well. But this is how to start. And I've already given you about 6 weeks' work in 4 lectures. So, if you ever come up and spend more time, we can take it a lot deeper. Yeah, anybody else? Yes. You don't try to empty it, and you don't not empty it. You just sit there. That's all right. That's all right. Supposing you're sitting beside a river, and there's a bridge going over the river. You're sitting under the bridge, and the freeway is going back and forth on the bridge. You're going to hear all the noise on the bridge because your ears aren't bunged up, but that's not going to matter. You're just sitting there. And all this din goes flying by, and after a bit you don't even notice it. Seriously, it works, you'll see. Don't deliberately try to think. Don't deliberately try not to think. Just sit there. You see, if you're worrying about the thoughts, which means you're chasing them. Just let them go on. Just let them go on by. I asked about this once when I was having a lot of trouble with it in the Far East. And my master said, well, this morning, under my robe, a flea was walking. Just I noticed it had strong legs. And you need to do that with your thoughts. Just notice they've got strong legs and let them march right on by. Don't get caught in them. Okay? You got anything to say, you two? I'm sitting there saying nothing. Come on. Turn your kibble. What about you? I was thinking of deeds of the utmost kindness. Remember that? There was one old monk who chased a monk who would never talk, however much he was asked to talk, who chased him like mad with a big stick behind him. Unfortunately, the old monk didn't catch him. Anybody got anything else? Yes. We were talking about what was the past, present, and future lives. And if I remember rightly, I said that it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, it could only be yesterday, it's still past life. Oh, yes, now I can give one of you Abbey.
Daily schedule. Normal daily schedule, depending on the weather, you get up about 45 minutes before.
Remember that you can have 7 feet of snow outside the front door.
And get up about 45 minutes before first light, which is can be anywhere between 3:15 and 7 in the morning. We have a 40-minute meditation, and we have morning service, which is recitation, which lasts about an hour. Then the monks disperse and they go off to various jobs. They clean up the temple, look in the kitchen staff, go off to make breakfast. And then they meet again for breakfast either in the dining room or in the meditation hall, depending on what's going on. So again, it depends on the rising time. That's usually about 2.5 hours.
The rising time must always be 45 minutes before first light. So it's always changing.
And the idea of that is that when the dawn is coming, you've already sat in meditation, and then you put your ketta on your head and dedicate yourself to following the Buddha's way. And the 7 strokes of the drums are the teaching that has come from the 7 Buddhas.
The drum sounds at the first streak of dawn. So the first word you hear are the first words you hear are the names of the 7 Buddhas from which the teachings come.
And then after breakfast, there's reading of the scriptures or lecture, and then the monks go off to work, whatever their work is in the monastery. And that puts you up to lunchtime. Eat lunch, you go to meditation all the time. Have some time off to rest. Work again.
Digestion is important.
Work from about 2:30 to evening service, which starts at about 3:30, which is recitation of the rules.
It's midday service, actually.
That we organize and then short meditation period, and then we work again, and that lasts till dinner. And we eat dinner, which is a medicine meal. And then we have usually rest and or recollection. The novices cautionally go into the meditation hall at about 7:25 to sit for meditation period, anyone else who wants to. And then all the monks come together at 8 for meditation and vespers. And then we often have tea for the day. And that's the basic schedule year-round with some variation depending on weather activity.
This can be altered. I mean, if overnight, you've got to remember that one Thanksgiving day, it was a gorgeous, gorgeous day. And I woke up in the morning, tried to open my front door, and 7 foot of snow was outside it. And you get this in the mountains. So you can say tomorrow we are going to do such and such, but tomorrow we may very well be out with a big shovel. You have to keep this in mind. You can't guarantee that the schedule is going to be what we said the schedule was. But by the time the lecture is over, which is about 11, see, in all Zen temples, the world is allowed in from between the hours of 11 and 3. That's the time you pay bills, you take phone calls from worldly, etc. And the lecture is usually over by 11 in the morning. And then that's when the temple gate is officially opened for tradesmen and postmen and all the other things that go on in the day. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it is officially closed. The big bell goes at 11 to to notify people it's 11 o'clock and the world's likely to turn up, so put your brains in gear for worldly matters. And at 3 the bell goes again, the great bell, saying the gates are closing to the world. Let's go and now go through how to meditate again, just in case we got knocked out of it a bit by what's been going on. And it goes back to being totally monastic again. After people go to bed, which again depends very much on the time they got up, but never later usually than about 10:30. After they've gone to bed, there is one monk who goes around on night watch, the Tengkien, the heavenly guardian as he's called. He goes around on night watch for fire, etc., and spends the time between his rounds meditating in front of the Kalanatha statue, which is one of the great guardians. And then, about 2 hours before dawn, the scripture of Kanzeon, how compassion is shown in the world, is recited, and then people get up for meditation. So there is a sort of perpetual meditation throughout the 24 hours, day and night. If we had a big bell tower, not a bell tower, a big drum tower, and another hunt hall, then we would add in some slightly different ceremonial. For example, the drum will be up there with the bell, and you will be able to see the dawn rather more quickly than when it hits Mount Shasta. So you'll be able to hit the drum just as the sun was coming up over the first light was coming up over the top of the mountain. But it is a 24-hour job. And we are a monastery. We do try, therefore, to keep the old rule of the world only coming in between the hours of 11 and 3. We are not here referring to laymen who are coming to meditate, have retreats, or to try their vocation. We are referring to somebody who turns up, shall we say, with a crate of tomatoes and says so much. You know, we're talking of ordinary worldly business. We're not talking about laymen who may need help. One thing I would like to make clear, and that is some people have the idea that they must be monks. They're missing out on something if they're not monks. The meditation of a layman and a monk depends very much on how much energy the layman or the monk puts into it. Does it take longer for a layman than it does a monk? The answer is usually yes, because the layman's out at work most of the day and can't spend all his time being in the monastery doing what a monk does. But there are exceptions to that. The big difference between a layman and a monk is, of course, that a layman can't be transmitted. So he cannot have it confirmed that he has had an understanding. The reason for this is because the priesthood as a whole does not have a control over the same sort of a control over the laity that they have over the priesthood. And just supposing something goes wrong with the person's training at a later date, and you have already certified that he's fine, if you have no no means of, what's the word I want, policing the situation. There could be harm to innocent people. That is the reason for it. But supposing you come to the monastery to try your vocation and discover you're not fit in your mind, or not ready, or unsuitable for being a priest. There's no crime in that, and there's nothing wrong with finding it out. In fact, it's extremely advisable you find out if you really do have the vocation of a priest, if you think you might have, and know that there is no stigma attached to having tried and found you haven't got one. You're just as much a member of the lay Sangha before and after such an attempt. I tell you this because we did have one person once who felt that he'd tried his vocation, it didn't come off, and therefore there was something wrong with him and he was unfit to be a layman. That is not true. That he was not ready yet or not suitable for being a priest was one thing, but he was an absolutely first-class layman. I would much prefer him to remain a first-class layman than try to be a third-class priest. So I wanted to put that into people's minds before they thought that perhaps you absolutely had to end up a monk. After all, if we all ended up monks, there wouldn't be any congregation. There also probably wouldn't be many children about either. It's a different way to go. It usually takes a bit longer. But that's all there is to it. Well, we've only got a few minutes. Yes. Very important not to inspire greed. You can actually do that. And if there are special needs, I am diabetic, for example. I can't eat the sugar and other things that would go into normal food. But I can eat minuscule amounts of honey. You have to be able to go along with things like that.
Also, if you live in the Bay Area, this is a mecca. If you want to be a vegetarian, this is a mecca of vegetarian food.
I was overjoyed with the Frugal Gourmet on TV last night when I got home, who gave me some terrific ideas for sweets for dinner and the like. Remember, I am Mughal, was busy writing down recipes. In very hot countries, you are not allowed a third meal. You don't eat after midday. That was the Buddha's, that was what happened in the Buddha's time. But supposing you have a country like Tibet, where it's extremely cold, or like Shasta, where if you don't put some hot soup down you before you go to bed, you're likely to wake up quite ill. There is a provision in the Buddha's teaching that if a medicine meal, i.e. to keep healthy, a meal to keep healthy is necessary, it can be had. And in our climate, we need it.
It's hard even when you live in 20 degrees outside all the time when you're out shoveling snow or
You're not supposed to kill yourself in this.
very, very hard.
Yes.
Are there certain requirements before studying whether
Certain requirements. There's a small ceremony saying that you sincerely wish to do the pilgrimage of the 33 shrines. And, well, obviously you come and talk to the priest and show why, explain that you wanted to do it. And, but it's laymen who do it, and some monks. It's interesting that Japan in recent years has turned some of those pilgrimages into, I hate to say this, very lucrative bus tours. The Shingon Church has done that, and you get on your bus at the beginning of I think they've got, is it 20 or 60 shrines? I can never remember the Shingon. There's 88, that's it, Chicago. And you get on your bus at one end, and it takes you however many days it takes to go to each shrine and meditate and visit. The 33 of Soto Zen, they haven't done that with, I'm glad to say. What we are doing, we've got the shrines now. We have 2 in the Albany Temple, one in the garden and one inside. There's one in Santa Barbara. Have they got 1 or 2? He's got one. There's one at, there's several around the cloister in Shasta. There's one at the Eugene Priory, one at the Portland one at Seattle, one in Vancouver. And as we get more temples, we give out more of the 33. And we do have a small ceremony, but I don't think it doesn't have to be in Shasta, does it? The opening ceremony? They were going to discuss that at one of the council meetings, and I don't know the answer. I think it can be done in any temple, the opening ceremony. It's usual to do Jukai before, but not necessarily. Not necessarily. People usually do that because they're up there then, and that's a good time to do the ceremony while they're there. Yes. Yes. You have to have been ordained and transmitted, and then you have your own temple, and there are a set of ceremonies that you must do. You have your own disciple by then, and you bring him to the state of what is called being a chief junior. Thereafter, when you feel you've taught him sufficiently that others can come and examine him, you put up a flag. Unfortunately, they've been using that particular flag for all sorts of things in the Bay Area and all over the place recently. It's a red, yellow, green, white, and purple windsock. And I'm sure you've seen them. They've been selling them in Cost Plus, to my horror. That is the official challenge flag of the Buddhist church. And you put it up outside your temple, and all the monks who feel like it and think they would like to try, seeing one of these flags, turn up on the day that you advertise in the actual newspaper in Japan. O ye great dragons and elephants who doubt that this is true Buddha, come ye forth and test and make sure. The dragon and the elephant, the great defender of the faith, is always shown as a dragon. That's symbolized as a dragon. The saint is symbolized by an elephant. So whenever you see an announcement which says, "O ye great dragons and elephants," it means, "O you defenders of the faith and saints, come forth and test to see if this be true Buddha, see if this one is still on the right path." And the first thing they do is test the master. Now, they don't usually come except for the very first one, which has a chief junior. They will come for others, but it's the first one where you have the chief junior that they usually come for most. You perhaps only get one or two at the others, but everybody and his cousin turns up to the first one. And there is a special ceremony called Jodo, in which the priest mounts on the high altar, on the Sumeru altar, as the Buddha that we see, and is asked questions from the mind of meditation by all the monks who are visiting. And it can be quite impressive. It's quite a dialogue. And then, if there's a chief junior, all of them have brought along their disciples and chief juniors and the like. And they next sit the poor chief junior on the hot seat and sort him out too. It's actually an extremely good system for making sure that people really are going in the right direction. And they do it every year. Some temples do it twice a year, and some do it just once. And some... No, it's a temple schedule. It's a monastic ceremony. But the congregation can come. It is not only a monastic ceremony, it is a public one. And if any of the congregation feel that, I'd like to check, he can turn up. He can't ask questions, but he can come to the ceremony. Oh, yeah. I actually prefer it that way. I'd sooner everybody knew what was going on and was happy with it than just being fixed in one's everlasting seat, so to speak. But I do wish they weren't selling the fight flags everywhere. Who does?
The nature company?
I don't know who does it, but they're the Dharma battle flags. The battle flags of the teaching. On that interesting note, we'll call it a day. And the chief examiner has this huge log, which stands about this high, and an 8-sided piece of wood. And he gives out the words, "O ye dragons and elephants who doubt, stand forth, question, and make sure." And he brings the hunk of wood down with a terrific crash on top of this block of wood and starts stirring it round and round. And you're standing on the altar and you're hearing this thing going round and round and round quietly. And you should produce 3 totally accurate answers. The chief junior only has to produce 1. And that's the standard by which it's judged. Okay.